Hi, everybody. I'm here today to tell you a terrible story. It's actually about Dan, who used to be a prison guard in Canberra, and he was locked up for over 4 months in one of our country's toughest jails after being accused of bashing and sexually assaulting his former partner, whose name is Sarah Parkinson. Those accusations were false. Late last year, Parkinson pleaded guilty to staging a crime scene and making a false rape claim. We're showing Sarah Parkinson's face on our thumbnail because I don't think it's fair that women's identity is so often protected in these circumstances when men who are falsely accused are often publicly shamed and never recover their reputations. Sarah Parkinson's sentencing hearing was today, and we're going to add the news about what happened there at the end of this video. But earlier this week, I spoke to Dan about his ordeal. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Bettina. How are you doing?
Really good, really good. So this is an incredible story. I just want to go through some of what happened to you over that period. So you were in a relationship with Sarah Parkinson back in 2011 and ended up living with her, and she was working in an admin position in a police station in Canberra. That was in November 2013. Now, I gather you broke off the engagement because you discovered she was having an affair with one of the police officers at the station. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. She was based at the Queanbeyan police station in New South Wales, just outside of Canberra. And once I found out that she'd been with this other officer, I decided to call it quits and cancel the engagement and, get ready to sell the house and move on with my life.
Yeah. And she ended up going, the police officer became her boyfriend. And I gather she was really upset when you broke off the engagement and all sorts of terrible things started to happen. Yeah?
Yeah, as soon as I called off the engagement, I said that I'd stay at my parents' house because she had nowhere else to go. And then that's when all the fun kind of ensued with AVOs and locks being changed in my house and all kinds of things. So that was the very beginning of it all.
Yeah. The AVO, this is a violence order she took out against you, and you advise, as men are usually advised, not to challenge that. But what's significant about that is it ended up really working very seriously against you when it came to the other charges, didn't it?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then they set it up so that they claimed you'd breached the AVO. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. There was numerous accusations that she made. And then, of course, because the AVO was in place, then that was then a breach of the AVO. So I was arrested for the second time at that point, and that's when I was arrested at the front of my work, the correctional facility where I worked, where about 4 or 5 police cars intercepted my vehicle and put me in handcuffs for something that I had no idea what was going on, completely confused by the situation. And then that's when they read out all the charges that she'd made up against me. Yeah.
And now was that the big scene that she actually faked a scene whereby she claimed you'd abused her and raped her. Tell us, I mean, that's the most extraordinary story. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was after this incident. So the incident spoke about being arrested. That was obviously I got bail for that, which meant I was on house arrest.
That was for the AVO charges. Okay.
Yeah.
And then came this fake rape. Which was in March. So this is the next year, isn't it? March 2014. Yeah.
So her allegation is that I apparently went to the house. She was outside at the time, I think, doing washing. I came over with a brick, or I picked up a brick, depends on which statement you want to read. They're all very different. In one of them, I hit her across the head with it. In another, I slammed her head against a retaining wall, resulting in a very, very small laceration. Yet in the statement, it was apparently so strong that it was to render her unconscious. I apparently then raped her, and then in one statement, I hosed her down In another statement, I didn't. So yeah, I mean, the contradictions in the ever-changing and statements that she made.
What really got to me is she planted a condom wrapper. I think it's very rare that rapists use condoms. Wouldn't that be true?
Yeah, and I mean, there's just so many like inconsistencies with it. You know, she said that, you know, they couldn't find the brick, so then it was, oh, he threw it on the roof, and then they look on the roof and it's not there, and then they couldn't find the actual condom, and then it was like, oh no, the cat ran away with it. You know, the police officer first on scene found her completely dry, which, you know, then made her statement of that I hosed her down completely false. Then, you know, the fact that she apparently, you know, heard my car in one of the statements, had a very distinct note. I didn't have that car anymore. That car then got taken out of the next statement. The fact that
so she initially claimed she'd lost her memory, and then she came in and made all these conflicting a whole series of statements after that, didn't she?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And at the time when these alleged incidents took place, you were actually at your parents' place, other witnesses were present, there was a photo taken of you there. So you could actually had a real alibi in that situation.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, what's really interesting is, okay, so you're charged, you're put into prison, which is a really serious issue for a prison officer, isn't it? I mean, it's very dangerous for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the prison hierarchy, you're probably the worst of the worst. I mean, police officers, ex-military, and definitely, you know, correctional officers or screws. You know, they're target on your back straight away. Then you factor in the types of offences they were too. So, you know, sexual assault is one of the worst that, you know, a guy can be accused of, or anyone to be accused of. That even in the prison hierarchy system is frowned upon as well. So, yeah, it wasn't a good place to be.
No, and this is a really serious prison, the Goulburn prison. You ended up having to spend a lot of time in the isolation unit to protect, you know, so that you could be protected in that situation. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. For my own safety, especially being a correctional officer in the ACT, there's lots of people that get charged in New South Wales and ACT, and they go between, you know, the AMC and Goulburn and things like that. So the threat of being recognised by someone was high.
Yeah, and it must have been. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I mean, I gather you were pretty suicidal at some point. Very scary situation. Yeah.
It was very, very emotionally draining. Being on like a constant state of alert, I guess you could say, for 24 hours a day is very draining on you. Having to invent backstories and things like that. Every time I was escorted to a visit, you know, on the weekend, the fear of someone recognising me, just being completely isolated and everything that was going wrong outside, not being able to do anything about it. That was totally left up to my parents to talk to lawyers, police, you know, just being so isolated, not being able to do anything about it. That was, you know, torturous. And yeah, like
and you were facing up to 15 years jail if you were convicted. I mean, you were on remand at that point, weren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. So, and you know, like you said before, you know, there's dark times in there. You know, you've got nothing but time and solitude, and you know, sometimes you do think the worst. I was often of the opinion that, you know, it would be easier if I wasn't around. My parents wouldn't have to worry. They wouldn't have to spend so much money. You know, I did get to the point where I looked at my radio and the cord on it would have done the job. I tried it, you know, I made sure it was the right length and everything else. So that's something that my parents have only recently found out. I know that broke them, but I felt like I couldn't do anything else. The only thing I could do was to not be a burden and not have them have to fight for something.
Yeah, really terrible. Now, what's sort of really scary, I think, about all of this, which you didn't really know at the time, was that Sarah Parkinson was being supported through all of these accusations she was making by the local police, by her boyfriend, her police officer boyfriend, and their friends in the police force. And what I think is extraordinary about this whole situation is when that alleged rape took place, in fact, another part of the police force also got involved. A criminal investigation unit. I gather it was led by a woman called Lisa Alexander. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, so Lisa Alexander was a detective, and still is actually, and I'm pretty sure she had a history in like sex crimes and sex offences. It somehow got taken out of the control of the Gungahlin police station, who had just botched it up from day one for either incompetence or their own reasons.
Well, I mean, that's where the boyfriend was. I mean, they had very good reasons to try to get you into trouble, didn't they?
Yeah, her boyfriend was part of New South Wales Police.
Okay, I see.
And that's where her and Sarah met. But obviously, New South Wales and ACT Police worked in conjunction with each other quite frequently, so everybody knew everybody. But it wasn't until Lisa took over the case that things started to finally unravel and the truth finally did start to come out.
But what really astonished me was that when that initial investigation was going on, and initially being handled by this group of police who won't do you any favors. I read somewhere that there was a quote that, don't fucking touch anything. The criminal investigation team saying to the Canberra police, don't do inappropriate things. And so there was this real clash occurring between the police who'd been very much supporting Parkinson and, very much on her side, and this new team coming in and being concerned that there are irregularities in the way the whole thing was being handled.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it got to the point where the original officers in charge in the investigation were actually under surveillance themselves. There was a big.
That's what I want to tell people about. I mean, this criminal. It was essentially a criminal investigation unit. Actually did a sort of sting operation, didn't they, on Parkinson, following Parkinson around, and also on some of the police who were initially involved in the whole case. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I think there was a few opportunities that they purposely used to put the officers in question almost there to kind of scrutinise their integrity. So they had them run their own personal surveillance, not knowing that they actually were under surveillance by the detective and the AFP. But yeah, they had her car bugged, which of course led to a few interesting stories when she accused my parents of stealing an iPad.
So when you're in prison, she then starts making accusations about your parents. There were various incidents with the car and stealing it. Can you tell me a bit about what was going on there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what we've come to realise is that she knew that my father was mainly funding the defence, and so to get her case to stick, the next person to get rid of would be him. It's something that Mum wouldn't be able to fight for herself. It would be an inconvenience. So while I was away, that was her next target, I guess you could say. So she'd taken out an AVO against my father on something that never took place. That was her first step. Dad fought that one rigorously, purely because he knew that if he didn't, well, he was in the same position that I was, that then all she'd have to do was to make another allegation and he'd be probably in the cell next to me. So she claimed that we'd stolen her iPad. She made a report to the police, and that she was able to track it using the Find My Phone app on her phone. Little did she know her car was actually bugged, and it showed her driving from my house that she'd taken ownership of to my parents' house, dropping off the iPad and then returning home. My father and a good friend of mine, who's a bodybuilder and butcher, apparently pulled her over on the side of the road, and she was able to overpower my friend with a knife. And
really? Wow.
Apparently so. Ended up with a small scratch on her hand. Reported that to the police. When they went out there, they found a knife at the alleged crime scene. That knife then actually was a match for the set that she had at home when they did a warrant on it. So again, it just shows more evidence that she planted in she went after my father, quite strongly after I was locked away.
And you're in prison and you don't know any of this is happening. She and presumably some of her police friends maybe are orchestrating all these allegations against your father and friends and so on. And in the meantime, another group of police is tracking her and some of the police from the original investigation. It's a most extraordinary story, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, there's definitely been twists and turns, and yeah, I mean, it gave us good reason not to trust a lot of police. We didn't know what was going on. We weren't aware of these investigations until after I was out, and I understand that. Obviously, they didn't want to compromise anything that was currently being undertaken or that would possibly be that would happen again in the future. So, I mean, without that investigation, I couldn't tell you where I'd be. I don't think I'd be sitting here now.
No, I don't think you'd be. Yeah. And one of the things that emerged also that she'd made previous allegations. There was, I think, a 2008 case where she complained a father of a friend had sexually abused her.
That's correct.
Yeah. So there's all this. So the police who are investigating her and, suspicious of her original accusations and also investigating some of the other police, then take all that evidence to a magistrate. And that magistrate immediately says you have to be let out,
Yes. So parents got a phone call quite late at night from our lawyers at the time, Ben Olick, and they said, we can't tell you much, but you need to give us a call back straight away. My parents originally thought the worst, getting a phone call late at night, me being in Goulburn, where they first thought someone had got to me, they'd found out who I was, and I was in hospital. But it was because of Lisa Alexander's work. They were able to put together a brief to show the magistrate that Sarah's character was definitely under scrutiny, that all the information they'd had on her from obviously tracking her car and the activities that she was up to jeopardised the case they had against me. So the DPP flipped on prosecuting me and put their efforts into getting me out and then prosecuting Parkinson.
Yeah, and you were let out that day. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I had a phone call early in the morning from one of the counsellors. I had a meeting with her at Goulburn, and she said that there was a high chance of me getting out today or the following day. They had to get it in front of the magistrate, and they weren't quite sure if that was going to happen in the morning or the afternoon. So it was. I've never felt time go so slowly in my entire life.
Oh my God, how terrible! Yeah. Okay, but so even when you're out living in Canberra, you didn't feel very safe. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of the police force who are clearly out to get you. Tell me what. So you ended up leaving the state, didn't you?
Yeah, and that was just to safe, to make sure that no further allegations could be made. So that was purely for my own safety at the end of the day. Yeah.
And in the meantime, your parents ended up spending what, $350,000 plus on legal fees?
Yeah.
They must have made a big hunk in their super.
Yeah, remortgaged. I mean, everything they've worked towards in their years has just gone down the drain just to defend innocence, really. It's
just terrible.
Like I said, without money, you're actually doomed in the system. It's it's a bit frightening.
Terrible. But it's okay. But in the end, that all that good money spent on these, lawyers who did a good job for you. Parkinson was actually found guilty in 2015 of making false accusations and public mischief. So she then appeals that, and there were years of legal wrangling, weren't there?
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't afforded any type of wriggle room when I went through the court system, and she had every opportunity to delay. And here we are, still kind of going through it and hoping for a good outcome.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years later. So for years, she used the law and fired lawyers and declared she was bankrupt and used every trick in the books to delay things. And then finally in November last year, just before Christmas, she pleaded guilty to making false claims and staging a crime scene. How did you feel then?
Yeah.
Must have been extraordinary.
It was a bit of a shallow victory because I knew she was only saying it because if she didn't, if she hadn't have said those things, it would have gone to trial and the evidence would have been so overwhelming against her. It would have been a better outcome for us. But I think the only reason she admitted to it was because it was beneficial to her, and that was based on her lawyer's advice. Again, we knew she staged it all. It was just the first time that she said it. So, yeah, it was a small win, but until it actually goes to court and she gets sentenced, I guess we're just going to have to see what happens with it. I'm hopeful, but also not hopeful after going through the system. It's very flawed. Yeah.
Well, we'll be talking to you after the verdict on Thursday. So we all have our fingers crossed for you, Dan.
Yes, that all.
But the other side of the story is that the main police officer, who was behaving in a really dubious way, has been forced out of the police force. Scott Corcoran is his name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. He got the old tap on the shoulder. He's had quite a checkered career in the police force, and I think this was the final straw. We have documents that his superiors were telling him that he was far too close and involved in the case. He's used his credit card to buy things for this person, for Miss Parkinson. There's definitely lots of text messages between her and also Scott White, her New South Wales police boyfriend. So, And is he under investigation now, the boyfriend? I believe he was at some point. We're not too sure. It's something that is probably still happening behind closed doors.
Yeah. So anyway, some of the police who behaved in a really dubious manner at least have had some consequences as a result of that. And you've moved on. You've got in a new city, you've got a new life, a new job, and a new girlfriend. I think you're very brave, Dan, embarking on a new relationship. Tell me how you felt about that.
Yeah, my girlfriend at the moment, she's just absolutely fantastic. So it's always, I guess, nerve-wracking telling someone of your past and your story, and then wondering what they're going to think of you, or if their opinion of you changes. But she's been nothing but supportive, and I've said to her before that if I had to go through what I have gone through to meet her and be with her, then I'd do it 10 times over. So she's absolutely fantastic, and maybe the best thing that's ever come out of this whole thing is that I get to spend some time with her, and that's amazing.
Well, there's no question you're better off than you had you gone ahead with that. Heaven forbid what would have happened to you if you'd end up marrying that woman.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a bullet dodged. So I'll chalk that one on the list.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you're feeling happier now, and I hope you'll be even happier still next Thursday. But I'll be talking to you then. Thanks very much, Dan.
No dramas. Thanks very much.
Hello, Dan. This is a very big day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, so finally got some good news after 6 years.
And the good news is Sarah Parkinson has been sentenced to 3 years in prison, which is a pretty rare event for a rape accuser.
Yeah. So 2 years of that will be a non-parole period, and the magistrate was quite damning and very critical of everything that she'd done, and taken into consideration how methodical and planned and her accusations were, and considering there hasn't been a case like this in ACT, I think they wanted to set a bit of a precedent for if it was to happen in the future. So it was a good outcome. I was originally expecting maybe somewhere in the vicinity of 6 to 12 months. To get a minimum of 2 years is it's good. It's a good outcome.
A very good outcome, and interesting that the magistrates were. It's a bit noisy, Dad. Are you out? Where are you? In a pub somewhere?
Yeah, I'm just going to find a little corridor. There we go.
And so you've been having a bit of a celebratory drink, have you?
Yeah. We had a lot of family and friends turn out for it, so they've been following it from day dot. So, finally had a nice beer in celebration rather than commiseration like it has been in the past. We'll probably kick on for the rest of the night.
And I gather there were a lot of legal people around, because this is setting real precedent that a woman gets her just desserts. Huh?
Exactly. Yeah, it was pretty quiet. I mean, we had our family there, a few lawyers, a few police. On her side, there was her grandmother and her partner's parents, and that was it. So her own mother wasn't even there to see her go down. But it was a pretty busy courtroom to finally, put this thing away.
And now she ends up where she put you.
Exactly right. So she'll be at the AMC for 2 years as a minimum, and so her time starts up today. So she was taken down immediately, which is a bit of a that will be a shock to her system. And it was nice to see it kind of finally wrapped it up as far as all the court procedures are concerned.
And then now, of course, your parents have spent over $600,000. They've destroyed their financial security to fight for you, and so the real question is whether they get any compensation on that.
Yeah, I mean, we can go through and try to get what's called an extra gratia payment through the Attorney General. But other than that, the only way we could have got compensation before was through a malicious prosecution, and the lawyers were kind of umming and ahhing about that. Unfortunately, Lisa Alexander, the detective that got me out, did such a good job of it. It kind of rendered that a little bit of a hard one to follow. But I mean, we'll try what we can. Like you said, a lot of money has been spent, and trying to regain that to even just get back to zero will be a task.
Maybe we should all write to the Attorney General and say, do the right thing. Huh?
Yeah, it'd be nice. It would be nice. Just to break even at the end of the day, if anything. I'll
let you go and have a good night. And thanks very much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks very much.
A lot.
Thanks for sharing it as well. Thank you.
Dan's story is not just about a good man falling victim to a mad, bad woman. What it does is it exposes an incredibly unfair legal system, and supported in this case by a corrupt police force determined to believe women at the expense of men. Feminism has succeeded in eroding men's legal rights to the point where a vicious woman can employ a vast weaponry to destroy men using false evidence, and no one gives a damn. I think it's really tragic that this case will make news, because for once a lying woman has been caught out and is going to jail. Hallelujah. But deceitful women usually get off scot-free, and that's totally shameful.